Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Bedtime for Sniffles, released in 1940. It's the 307th in the series and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Mouse Chronicles Blu-ray set, and I have a link below to that set. You won't find this on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves upload it on their own channel, as it is a copyrighted short. But in case you haven't seen this one, not really too much happens, and if you're thinking it's going to be a repeat of Goodnight Elmer, given the title name, thankfully it's the opposite. So you have Sniffles trying to stay awake. Although it's for a good cause, he's just trying to stay awake so he can catch a glimpse of Santa. But he doesn't quite make it, and we'll go through this short from start to finish in relation to that. Trivia-wise, there really isn't much aside from a few little topical things in Sniffles' home, plus a reference to a staff member within as well, and I'll definitely point that out to you. Now, I've already gone through where Chuck Jones was at around the time this short was made, so this is during Chuck Jones's slower Disney-esque period, and this short actually comes across as pretty much anything Disney would have done. If you replaced Sniffles here with either Mickey, Donald, or Goofy, this story could actually work. One of the characters wants to stay up to see Santa. Hey, it works. And this short actually plays out like that as well, although the timing is definitely a lot more slower. But you can't deny that at least this one looks beautiful, and honestly, as a short to watch around the Christmas period, this is actually quite a nice one. Just don't go in expecting this to be the Chuck Jones that we all know and love, the one that created the Roadrunner shorts, the Hunting trilogy, and Duck Amuck. But if you take it for what it is, I think it's a nice little charming one. But we'll go through it anyway, and like I said, I will point out any other references as we go through. Now, unfortunately, at the time of this recording, the original titles have been considered lost, although there is a rumor circulating around that someone has a 35mm print of this with the original titles. If so, hopefully one day that will show up. But once we get past the blue ribbon titles, I like the fact that it looks like in the very first shot we see a bunch of carolers painted in the background, so it's a nice little touch there. And of course we hear those carolers singing Joy to the World, and hey, it sets it up pretty nicely as we pan up and we see these beautiful backgrounds showing us that I guess we're in a European type town. I don't know, but it still looks really nice.
Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Let every heart prepare him room.
But we pan past a lot of these chimneys, and I gotta say, as the carolers fade out, I like the fact that we're hearing some bells in the background, and we're just hearing this ambience. Say what you want about this short, but it definitely sets up the mood nicely in the very beginning. But then we slowly hear Sniffles singing, which, yes, I know, it's annoying, I know. But I guess that's part of the charm of the character, isn't it? And at this point, it's Margaret Hill Tabole doing the voice of Sniffles, and of course, singing off key. But we see that Sniffles is living in some sort of a barrel that's next to a chimney. Now, if that is actually intended to be something that was used back then, definitely let me know in the comments, because I can't seem to find anything about that. But in any case, it's a nice looking little home.
Jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
We see inside Sniffles' home, and we see Dartmouse and St. Rodents, and that could just be a reference to Dartmouth and St. Roberts. Now, I'm not familiar with the schools in the United States, but I'm assuming that they are prestigious schools, so if you know more about that, definitely let me know. But what I do know is we see Acme here. It's not the first time Jones has used Acme, but that's definitely something that he'll be known for, especially once the Roadrunner series gets going. And what a nice touch that at the end of this bed, it's a comb. In fact, I love all these little details. Jones would do a lot of shorts where he plays with scale and size, so whether it's in the Sniffles shorts or in the future where he does other mice-related shorts, or even shorts where you have giants, for example. So yeah, Jones definitely had a thing for playing with size. We see a cut to the calendar, which tells us that, yep, it's Christmas Eve, and we even quickly pan past a Christmas list, which is very blink and you miss it here, but it basically says, please bring me some cheese and some Swiss cheese and some American cheese. Yep, give me all the cheese. I love cheese. We end up seeing a pocket watch, which has been repurposed as an actual clock, and it says Monahan there, and Monahan is most likely a reference to writer Dave Monahan, who was working at the studio at the time. And we see that Sniffles pretty much confirms what the rest of the short's going to be. Christmas is almost here, in an hour and 33 minutes, and we see some beautiful well-rounded animation here as he decides, you know what, I've got to actually have some coffee if I'm going to stay up. Good idea. Now, Haxwell Mouse Coffee, ha ha, that's a play on the Maxwell House coffee brand. You gotta love these mice puns that you see in some of these shorts, but it's pretty clever. So we see that Sniffles is going to prepare some coffee, and this is the sort of thing that Jones would end up doing away with. He wouldn't really do shots like that where it would be a character preparing something. Jones is still working on his timing. We still hear that wonderful off-key singing that we all love that Sniffles does.
Song tonight. Jingle bells, da 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 da. Da 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 da.
So he turns on the radio and we hear the chimes, which I believe that's from NBC. That would be done during their radio broadcasts. So the song we hear in the radio is actually a Johann Strauss song called Artist's Life, and it's a nice little tune, because at this point in time, in fact, you'll notice this is pretty much what life would have been like in the late 1930s, early 1940s. Of course, you wouldn't have talking mice, but households would typically, when they were at home, either read a book or pretty much listen to the radio. There was no TV, at least not widespread. There was some experimental or really expensive TVs out there. They were basically just for the rich, and it certainly wasn't widespread. So radio was definitely king. So pretty much what Sniffles is doing is what a lot of people would have been doing at the time. And the radio would play so many different radio shows, but of course also play a lot of music. And a lot of the time, yeah, they would play the classical music such as this.
On an open sleigh.
And it's a beautiful tune, and I do like the animation of Sniffles dancing to it. Again, Jones would pretty much move away from doing this sort of stuff, but it's nice to see though. He goes to the mirror and he, I guess, is so proud of himself. He says, hey, what a good looking mouse, and so on. So it's a cute little scene, but again, I'd argue it's not really needed. But again, nice animation there, but the song immediately changes. Now, what's interesting is that Carl Starling, he does a lot of musical puns, but a lot of the time, most people, they wouldn't even know that they're musical puns. It's more those in the know that would be aware of those musical puns. Audience at the time, hearing those tunes, would more likely get the joke, but these days a lot of people don't. Here, we got musical puns, but regardless of whether you know the tune or not, the musical pun is actually easier to follow. So, of course, what do we hear? Sleep, baby, sleep. Ha, ha.
Sleep, baby, sleep. To my breast, angels are watching love while you're at rest.
But as that song is playing along, I do like the subtlety of the animation here. So you have Sniffles in the fighting spirit. You know, he's up and at him, he's going to stay up, he's going to see Santa, but as the song goes on, he slowly but surely drifts off to sleep. Again, yes, the scene does take perhaps a little bit too long, but I do like the subtlety of the animation as the song plays, and it's so subtle as he just gets more tired and ends up falling asleep on the brush.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, as o'er the fields we go, a-laughing all the way.
But the song changes to something a little bit more upbeat, which is naturally Jingle Bells. And in this short, anytime you hear a group of singers singing these songs, it's pretty much a musical group that was in quite a few shorts, but The woman actually doing Sleep Baby Sleep, Keith Scott has confirmed it's a lady by the name of Jeanne Dunn. Now, Sniffles thinks he has the measles because of the way the brush is, the way it pressed against his face, I guess.
Jingle bells,
Measles!
jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what
Thought
fun
for a minute I had the measles.
Now, measles was definitely around, but there was no vaccine at the time. So at that point in time, if you had the measles, you were quarantined in your home. And there's actually quite a few shorts around that do point that out, where you have a character comically having dots on their face and all of a sudden it's measles and they would be quarantined. The vaccine itself wouldn't be introduced until the 1960s. But I just find it weird that Sniffles just laughs it off. Oh, it's just the measles, when measles can be quite deadly. But moving on, we see only about 20 minutes has passed and already Sniffles doesn't look like he's going to make it. And again, this is another musical pun by Carl Starling. We hear Beautiful Dreamer, because what else are we going to hear, right? This one may not be as obvious since it's not actually a song that's played on the radio and played for laughs like Sleep Baby Sleep being played was, but it still does the job. And I do like the animation, again, of Sniffles struggling to stay awake. Like how he would just try and bring himself up to a big smile, fully awake, and then just droop into tiredness. Regardless of your feelings of this short, if you're an animation student, this is actually a great scene to study. How to show one emotion going into another. It's a great piece of work here. But this rendition of Beautiful Dreamer, I love the violins in this rendition. So the arranger in this case, Milt Franklin, did an excellent job deciding, yep, we're going to have this more violin heavy. And it sounds really good. It's definitely one of the better renditions I've heard in an animated short. And again, we're playing with size. So the water taps, or faucets, depending on your part of the world. There are, of course, eye drops here, and we see rice straw cigarette paper, because, again, these were actually made specifically for kids. Sure, kids can see them, and they obviously did, but this was for everyone, and cigarettes, well, they were definitely more abundant back then as opposed to today. And it's definitely clever how he's got like a walnut that opens up, and that's one of those small bins that you would have in the bathroom. But we see that Sniffles wakes up for a brief moment, but then goes to the door and starts drooping asleep again.
God, can't go to sleep. God, stay a little bit.
But again, the score, it's definitely a highlight here, as great as the animation is, because you got the upbeat music for a little bit, but then as soon as he stands outside the door hoping that Santa will come soon, it then goes back into Beautiful Dreamer. But before he has a chance to fully fall asleep, we have a payoff to the fact that he was making coffee. Although I do have to wonder, he put the coffee on, was it boiling for like 20-something minutes or something? But that's okay, we won't worry about that, of course, it was just something I noticed. But the payoff of the snow going on his face isn't particularly funny. It's just, okay, he's half asleep, he's got snow. I guess people might chuckle at that because of his facial expression, but whatever. So he says, nothing like a good cup of coffee to keep you awake.
Nothing like a good old cup of coffee to keep you awake.
Got some beautiful effects animation there of the steam from the coffee as we pan over and see that another half an hour has passed. And sure enough, we go back to Sniffles and he's pretty much fallen asleep. We hear the NBC chime again, coming from the radio, and we hear that station KFWB has signed off. So first of all, that radio station was owned by Warner Brothers, so hence KFWB. Some of the movie studios actually owned radio stations at the time. I mean, why not? Because radio was very popular, right? The voice coming from the radio is Gil Warren, and he had recently been on the short for Tex Avery called Holiday Highlights, where he was the narrator. And I believe, because I couldn't find too much information on him, I believe that he was actually someone who worked at KFWB. Now, if I'm wrong about that, definitely let me know in the comments, but I believe that he was there, so it definitely makes perfect sense, and it's a nice little in-joke if you're aware of it, and even if you don't, it's okay. It's a perfectly competent radio announcer.
This is station KFWB, signing off. Good night, all.
But unlike today, where radio stations can be 24 hours because you can just have a computer playing music all night, well, they typically signed off for the evening and that's pretty much it. But look at the animation of Sniffles listening to the sign-off and look at the eyes. This is the sort of thing that Chuck Jones would end up building on as the years go by with his shorts, where he would animate eyes in a particular way to express emotion, while perhaps the rest of the figure would be in one still pose. Now, I don't believe this is the beginnings of that, but it is something that he definitely picks up on and continues to do all throughout the years, until he perfects it in about the late 1940s. But again, he's trying to stay awake, his body's bouncing to the actual ticking of the clock, and decides, you know what, I'm going to read something, and brings out a magazine. Now we've got another mouse pun, which instead of good mousekeeping, that's a parody of the magazine Good Housekeeping. And that's certainly not the first time, and I don't believe it's the last time you'll actually see a parody of that. In fact, I think even in Tom and Jerry they've done it a few times. But you will actually see an ad on there with a yawning boy next to a tire. I've mentioned this in a few reviews already, but I'll just briefly mention that that is the Fisk Tire Boy. So that's basically one of the most famous advertisements of all time, where the slogan was "Time to retire," and it's a play on retiring your car and of course retiring for bed. And yeah, like I said, it's one of the most famous advertisements of all time, and definitely appropriate for this short as a wonderful little gag there. And again, we start hearing the score, Beautiful Dreamer, because that's pretty much the theme of the late half of this short. We see another page, Easy Catch Mousetrap, Ask the Man Who Caught One. And I'm not sure if that's a reference to a particular advertisement. I've had a look around, but this is so generic that it'll take me a long time to actually research if it is based on a mousetrap ad of the time. So if you do have the answer to that, definitely let me know in the comments. But look at the way that the scene is lit up. So we pan up and we can see the bed, and look at the way it's lit. I just like how it's got that glow about it. Normally you would have the light source, which in this case is the candle, so it'd be lit up in a different way, but I love how it's exaggerated here for comedic purposes, and this restoration just shows it off so well. Before that Looney Tunes Mouse Chronicles set came out, this short just looked terrible. It was so faded and just dull. But at least now with this restoration, even if this isn't exactly a short I really love or anything, it's absolutely gorgeous looking. So Sniffles looks around and keeps getting hints that it's time for bed. But no, he's adamant, he wants to stay up and see Santa, so he goes back to the sink, which has water already in it. But we get a nice little payoff where he got the hints before about the bed, but as soon as he sinks his head inside the water, he still sees the bed and with him in it. And we see that a spirit version, I guess, of Sniffles is calling him to bed, saying, "No, you're done, you gotta go to bed." But again, that rendition of Beautiful Dreamer just sounds so beautiful, especially in this scene here. I mean, the way it's arranged, again, there's definitely a highlight here. And I love the acting between these two Sniffles characters. So you've got the spirit Sniffles trying to convince the real Sniffles to come to bed, and just the acting between the two, the stubborn refusals of the real Sniffles to go to bed until he finally gives in and, half asleep, heads over to bed. I love the animation of the dreamlike walk here. So if anything, he's probably already sleeping, and this is probably just what he's dreaming already. But still, it's a nice little scene here as we start to cap everything off. And Sniffles is now in bed, and the spirit even blows out the candle, so that's awfully nice of him. And as he falls asleep, we pan over and we see the silhouette of Santa. So Sniffles just missed out. Oh well, maybe next year, Sniffles. Okay, so watching this short, honestly, this is probably the best Sniffles short, at least from the initial period. When Jones reinvented the character for his last few shorts, the really talkative Sniffles, those were great, and I think that's the best use of the character. But out of these really early ones, the slower paced, Disney-esque ones, this one is probably the best one, and it's a charming little story. Again, I think if you go in with the mindset of what type of short you're going to be watching, and especially for one that you can watch around Christmas time, this is a charming little one. I can't find myself hating this. Yes, it is a little bit slow. It could be trimmed a little bit. It's 8.5 minutes after all, so maybe it could have been pared down to 7 and still get its point across. But otherwise, honestly, this is a beautiful short. It gets 8 out of 10, so a little bit higher than the other Sniffles, I guess. But you can't deny it looks beautiful. The animation is incredible in a lot of scenes, especially the character animation of Sniffles trying to stay awake. But the underrated aspect here is definitely the score by Carl Starling. But that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
George